The Selkie folklore is much older than I originally realized. Welcome back to week 2 of my folklore DrawTober, and this week everyone asked me if I could do some research about the Selkie. According to many scholars, they believe the legend of the Selkie might have dated back all the way to the Viking Age, as in Finnfolk or Sea Folk, but they are not interchangeable in terms of myth and meaning. As I'm sure most of us are familiar with, the Selkie folklore originated in Norse mythology in Scotland, Orkney, Iceland, Ireland, and the Faroe Islands. According to most of the mythology, they are a gorgeous creature who lives most of their lives in the water as seals and will periodically shed their seal skin to venture onto land. Unfortunately, oftentimes their stories end in heartache and loss, speaking to humans' need to control what is instinctively wild or the inability to deny one's true nature. However, aside from their shapeshifting abilities, enhanced senses, strength, and agility, they do not have magical powers, which I found very interesting. At least not in the more traditional folklore. Their ability to control the weather or sing like sirens were due to their myths mixing with other folk tales, which were seen in 13th century Celtic versions of modern-day mermaids who were said to be mischievous creatures with gorgeous singing voices. The term Selkie derives from the Scots word for seal and have many other spellings, including selkies with a Y or selchies spelled Selchies, sometimes referred to as Selkie folk, which is Fowk. As time has progressed, many stories of the Selkie has been written, and within these stories, most speak of a time limit in which they can remain or transform into a human. Some myths say a Selkie can only transform once a year on Midsummer's Eve, during a full moon, or even 7 to 9 days apart. However, when separated from their seal for too long, their first instinct is to rush towards the water, many times unable to return to land for 7 years or at all. But what stays constant is that they are not able to change at will and are dependent on their seal skins, which is often exploited by humans. Surprise, surprise. Most of the more popular stories speak of a fisherman who happens upon a group of Selkie dancing on the beach. He becomes enamored by their beauty and attempts to steal one of their skins, forcing one of the Selkie to become his wife and bear his children. Eventually, the child finds their mother's seal skin and gives the Selkie her freedom, never returned either by choice or curse. Within most of the myths, the mother leaves her children behind, but in some, she does take her half-Selkie children with her, leaving her heartbroken husband behind to search for her for eternity. However, one of my favorite Selkie myths is called a Selkie tale. Instead of the traditional tale of a fisherman stealing a Selkie's seal skin to force her into marriage, this story speaks of a curse that befalls the Sea King's beloved children by a jealous sea witch, forcing the children to remain as seals for most of their lives, only to return to land as humans once a year. Eventually, one of the Selkies fall in love with a fisherman and creates a family with him, but eventually must return to sea despite the love she has for her family. And this is just the cliff notes of the story. I definitely suggest you look into it. It is amazing. Despite the differences between this story and countless others, the underlying theme of heartache and loss holds true, sharing with the world the pull between two vastly different worlds and the pain of a love that cannot last. I also read that male Selkies also exist in folklore, but they're not portrayed the same way as women Selkies. Sometimes they are said to be seductive and conniving, tricking women during times of grief and whisking them away. In most of the stories about Selkie women, you cannot summon them, but you can summon a Selkie man. 7 teardrops into the water will summon one, but you won't be happy with what comes out. Most of these stories I've noticed have been used to explain away a missing woman, whether she was kidnapped, murdered, or died at sea. Other portrayals of this myth have also been used to explain why a woman has become pregnant by an unknown man, saying her pregnancy was the cause of a Selkie who vanished, leaving her to tend to her children on her own. There's also stories about men who consensually have children with a human woman, but the story still ends in tragedy, with the man trying to take his Selkie child back to the sea, but they both end up dying in the end. And then in other Orkney-specific mythologies, they speak of Selkies being reincarnated souls of those who drowned at sea. And yet on the flip side, other Orkneys speak of Selkie as fallen angels or souls who have committed sins condemned to live in the ocean as punishment. But where did the myth of the Selkie even come from? Many scholars believe that the myth could have begun due to the Sami and Finnish people, because both of these cultures used seal pelts for their clothes and kayaks. Seal pelts are wonderful for warmth and very durable. However, when they become fully saturated in water, they become very heavy and they lose their buoyancy, which meant before the next use, they had to be fully dried. I believe that either of these groups of people could have been seen emerging from the water to then remove and dry their clothes and kayaks, which could have inspired the seal transforming into humans portion of the lore. Other scholars also spoke of Spaniards becoming shipwrecked who also wore seal pelts, thus furthering the lore regarding dark-haired and eyed people washing up on shore fully wearing seal skins to then become human. With the Scottish already unwilling to hunt or harm seals due to their culture significance, it's believable that they would happen upon a being wearing a seal pelt and then conclude that they are mythical creatures. This is one of the first myths I've come across with real-world origins that have held true despite the multiple retellings. Sure, there are undertones to to the story regarding one's true nature, the greed of humanity, and loss, but it's interesting to see that selkies have stayed constant. It's just their situations that have changed. Out of all of the folklore that I've looked into so far, the selkie has been the most difficult to research. Most of the stories that I found are more so just folktales about the selkie woman, what has happened to her, how she has ended up in the situation that she is in. When it comes to the selkie itself, there are no origin stories of how this creature became a selkie. It's more so along the lines of, it already exists. You have to protect yourself. You have to protect your individuality. You have to be cautious. As always, let me know what other folklore I should talk about in the future, and be sure to check out the stickers that I've made from these drawings.